again to the Celestic Intelligence podcast. Today is we're doing a lot of we did a research, analyzed the Cracker Barrel rebrand incident that cost well over $700 million, 700 million to launch the rebrand. And I don't know what the total costs are in loss in stock, trust, and customers. But today we are going to be developing our soft skills with some people don't know what all of emotional and social intelligence is. Today we're going to be talking about catalyzing change and what does that mean? And I use the social and emotional intelligence coaching toolkit as my guide to help share this information with you guys. First and foremost, if you are reaching this and you're just finding my channel, please make sure to like and subscribe. Comment if you feel led to do so, but definitely like and subscribe. It helps me with the algorithms and my goal of reaching 1,000 subs by the end of the year. I think I could do it. And this channel is really built on developing your intelligence that you're born with. So we've got this body intelligence, emotional intelligence, social intelligence, mental intelligence. We've got all of this beautiful intelligence all wrapped up into one, and I like to call it solistic intelligence. And so that is what I named my company. And my name is Amelie, if you don't know me already. And I am a Chief Embodiment Officer and founder of Solistic Intelligence, and also the creator of Nervous System First Leadership, which is a great program for leaders that are looking to enhance their authentic expression of leadership. Something that is going to be a lasting change. I don't necessarily like the word sustainability or sustainable, but this is a long lasting change. This is a toolkit that you get to take not just in your business. I mean, it works for business, but you get to use it in your life altogether. Yeah, Brick, welcome. Hello, Nana Rose, welcome. All right. Well, without much more ado, I do want to get into the topic today. We're going to be talking about initiating, managing, and leading change. Nigreed, we're talking about catalyzing change. So this is a social intelligence from the social and emotional intelligence coaching toolkit. We're going to be talking about that. If you see me looking down, I have it all printed out. So let's get started. So initiating, managing, and leading change. Now, people with this competency, oh, hello from Turkey. I'd love to go to Turkey. It's one of my definitely top 5, maybe even top 3 countries I would love to visit. Captain Kayaking has a link, I think, to your YouTube. Let's see if I can remember that. Otherwise, I don't know how I can get it after, but Captain Kayaking. Okay. But let's talk about people who have this competency. So people who have the competency of catalyzing change recognize, one, a need for change. Okay, so they see that a change needs to be made. And I am kind of piggybacking this off of the failure of Cracker Barrel managing their rebrand properly. And so, obviously there was a recognized need for change in that scenario. They recognized this need to change the core audience, to invite more of a younger crowd into their restaurants. And, that's completely normal, especially for these times. We're always looking to expand our audience, and the way that they did it, it alienated the core audience in an effort to gain an audience, and they lost on both fronts. It was a poorly strategized war. How's your day going right now? It's going well. It's nice. It's not too hot, and I love teaching. So this is, I love to be here sharing with everybody. I want to be a positive shift in the world. So they recognize the need for change. They take ownership of change initiatives and they remove barriers to the change. So they're recognizing the change. They're owning a certain strategy of how we're going to effectively change and what initiatives we use. You're absolutely yummy. Thank you so much. You're sweet. I like your voice. I know. Tell me if this is true, but people are like, your voice sounds like a hypnotherapist or hypnotist or something. I can't remember what they said. Um, okay, so they take ownership of these change initiatives and then they remove the barriers to change, okay? They remove the barriers to change. So, what barriers would there be? They're not doing it in a reactive way either. They're doing it in a really effective way, all right? The people who catalyze change, which is initiating, managing, and leading it, they also challenge the status quo. So, people who have this competency are going to stand up against people who say, we've always done it this way. Okay. We've always done it this way. It's working, whatever. Hi, Mike. Mike's back. Christian, hello, welcome. My day's been going really well. I feel really good about my stream I did earlier today, and just back to do some social and emotional intelligence teaching. So they challenge the status quo. They stand up to opposition. They stand up to resistance in not just in a reactive way. They do it in a fully thought out way. Now, a well regulated leader or a well regulated person is going to look at opposition or resistance as maybe we need to look at this a little deeper. Maybe we need to pause and consider the resistance. Maybe we need to pause and consider why there is opposition to this before we start stepping into it. A well regulated leader, when they're initiating these changes, when they're managing these changes, are going to look at all of that as a way to attune to the audience. Now, if somebody's just wanting to tear something down, they're obviously going to say, well, that is an opinion, but this is our vision. This is a part of our culture. And everyone is attuned to this. The people that identify with this brand or our audience, they're going to resonate a lot deeper. Okay, so they do challenge a status quo though. Trying to think of a good status quo. I mean, anytime anybody says it is what it is, which is like one of my most hated statements, I do not like that one whatsoever. Anybody who challenges, like, we've always done it this way, it's an effective this is effective. We make do with what we got. Somebody who can catalyze change can see past that. They can see past these barriers. So they remove those and they can challenge it, and they challenge it in a way that's not, it's not resistant, and it's not necessarily, I mean, there's a little bit of opposition, but they're not doing it in a way that's challenging in a negative way. It's challenging it in a let's think beyond this, because they are likely in their higher mind and able to see past what the status quo has to offer. Well, what if we try this method? What's the worst that could happen? They kind of play out the whole scenario. Okay. Then people also with this competency, they champion the change and enlist others in pursuit of it. So they make compelling arguments for the changes. These ways that we've been doing it, it's really hard for us to get that initiative out there. Let's think of this in a different way and re-strategize. Instead of just going full hog and doing everything aggressively, maybe we pace it out. Maybe we regulate this a little bit. And they're not the only ones behind the change. They enlist others with compelling arguments of why this change needs to occur. I mean, for all it's worth, the DEI and cultural initiatives, at its core, I understand why those initiatives are necessary and needed. But the way that they've been implemented and rolled out has caused so much opposition and change in a negative way, not in a catalyzing change and getting people behind this way, but in a negative way where it's like fear based instead of embodied. We're doing this out of fear. People that are minorities are not getting hired. People that are minorities are not getting hired in these positions. When in all actuality, the DEI is meant for everybody, right? And DEI, if you guys aren't unaware, is diversity, equity, and inclusion. But if you're rolling it out in fear, that's not going to catalyze change. It's not encouraging and enlisting others to pursue it in an embodied way. An authentic leader is going to be able to hear everybody, minority, majority, it doesn't even matter. They don't look at that. All they look at is this is a good effort. This is a good change. This is going to make the world better. Okay? So let's say let's say my initiative, my change is let's end toxic workplace culture. Let's end the retaliation. Let's end the discrimination. Let's end the exclusivity that happens in workplaces. The feeling of not belonging in a workplace. The feeling of being pushed out. Okay? There's definitely a polarity in business. It's a culture. There's a norm around it. That's okay. So when I come through and I say I'm initiating ending toxic workplace culture and replacing it with well-being workplaces where your psychological well-being is important, where your emotional well-being is important, just as much as your physical well-being is important. The whole workplace needs to be well-being first, to value its employees, because they're just as much of a stakeholder in that company as anybody else, as the customers, as the investors, as the owners, as the founders. Okay? We can say a lot about Google, but Google has invested a lot of money into figuring out how do we have the best workplace culture. And we can say a lot of negative things about Google, but when it comes down to psychological safety, they care about how do we implement this. They're brave enough to catalyze change, to say, you know what, we don't need leaders, and they got rid of a bunch of their engineering managers. If we get rid of the engineering managers, then the ideas will flow a lot better. It'll flow a lot faster. What happened? Months later, they were trying to get those managers back in because they realized, from this implementation, maybe it was a little reactionary, and maybe it was a little, maybe not reactionary, but it was really idealistic. Yeah. And my story. Wait, this is the best story I ever heard. And my story. Yes, I mean, this is very true. So they took this chance to go out and change the way the organization was managed, the way the hierarchy was structured. They went out and they made that shift. They hired them back because managers are important, okay? That's what the lesson was out of that whole thing. But they took a chance and they did that, and then they retreated and they said, you know what, that didn't work. It works, I think the flat hierarchy works up until probably about 150 employees, and then anything beyond that, you have to have management. There has to be somebody regulating each team to make sure that they're they're doing the things that they need to do, that their vision is going in the direction that it needs to go. So years later, Google's at it again, and they they initiated a change. Well, it was a research first of called Project Aristotle to figure out what motivates employees to be their most creative, what motivates employees to be their most innovative. All right. So they championed a huge change, and they enlisted all of these employees that worked for Google to pursue it, to figure out what are these data points that make teams effective. And they found that psychological safety was the number one. So well-being workplaces. Google is at the forefront of this. I remember reading about them years ago and just being kind of in awe of how they structure their campus, how they treat their employees. I mean, it's not you go into the office and you're sitting behind a computer all day. I mean, probably a lot of people do that at Google. But they have sleeping pods. They have you know, a free cafeteria. And I don't know, I'm making things up, but they have a cafeteria where, food is available. Maybe there's a snack area. There's ping pong tables, pool tables, gaming, massage chairs. Just think of all these like really nice well-being additions to the work environment. People love working there because there's all of these outlets of any time that you're having a creative block, you can step away from your desk and go un- unwind for a little bit if you need it. It's there. I remember when Nike came out, I was really astonished, back in the early 2000s, that Nike had on site childcare at their campuses. They have, cafeterias at their campuses. I toured a facility and they provide reduced cost micro market. Micro market is kind of like it's not like a vending machine, it's not like a market, but it's kind of an in between of that. And so the company would subsidize some of the food cost so that their employees are purchasing healthy food for their lunch breaks at a reduced cost. Hey, Ryan, good to see you. So, when we're looking at initiating, managing, and leading change, Google did this in a huge way of how they manage their employees. They had catalyzed a huge change. And they weren't the only ones, like Nike was doing it. And a lot of these other larger companies are, that was part of their benefit package. We know that you're behind a desk all day. We know that you're operating. We want that creative input. We hired you for that creative, innovative mind that you have. We want to make our product the most dynamic. And they did. Google did a good job of being one of the firsts, for being one of the first search browser, whatever it's called. Can't think of the word right now, but they were dynamic in that way. And it was because they, implemented this really deep psychological safety, and they're still doing it, and they're still searching for it. And really, it boils down to, do you want it? Like, you have to be able to champion the change, be able to hold that change, and then to bring others in that believe in that pursuit of whatever that change is. Okay. Catalyzing change, just going on, people with this competency will also model the change expected of others. So it's not just do as I say, not as I do. This is doing as I say because I'm also doing it too, right? They're embodying it. There's a thing called mirror neurons that are in our mind. And the way that they discovered this, it was a research study. There were some scientists and they were watching some macaque monkeys. And these scientists were very interested in large motor movements of the arm. So they're watching the monkeys and they have all the little brain diode things reading their brain. What is this XP shenanigans? I have no idea. Hi, Abir. Welcome. And so they're observing these monkeys and they have all the brain scans on them, and the monkey that's actually doing the executive movement is has a certain, there's a certain firing in their brain. And then there was another monkey that was observing the one that was moving, watching the executive movement, and that same area of the brain was firing off. So it looked like even though one was observing, one was actually doing the executive function, because of the mirror neuron, the one that was observing had the same chemical reaction in the brain, the same neural activity in the brain as the one that was doing the movements. Okay? So when I say you model the change expected of others, it's because when we observe people doing a thing, doesn't matter what it is, our neurons start firing. So if you're watching a training video, even watching that training video, your neurons, like watching somebody drive a forklift or something, your neurons are like, oh, okay, that's how you would do it. So when you model the change expected of others, there's a scientific reason why it's valuable for you to observe somebody doing something before actually doing it, because it shows you the way of doing it. That's why uh, safety training videos come at the beginning of a job if you're going to be working in a hazardous area. They're showing you the proper way of lifting, the proper way of operating machinery, the proper way of, whatever it is, labeling something, because they model that, they want you to model that change that, or they want you to model that training that you're seeing, so that everything is done consistently. And it's because of mirror neurons that this is available to us. People with this competency will also give people detailed, advanced information about future changes. Okay, so the just going back to the Cracker Barrel incident that just recently happened with their rebrand fail, I call it a crack in the a crack in their nervous system, or nervous system crack. They didn't give any detail advance of to any of their stakeholders that this change was happening. They just went out and changed. They took, the classic logo, they changed that to something really simplistic. They took out decor that was in they took out decor that was in the restaurants. They were already changing the menus, adding things, taking things away, trying to give healthier options. And what was the other thing? There was one more. Well, all that said, they were disconnected from the total nervous system organization of Cracker Barrel. One, their core audience, which is their customers, the regular ones that come in and support them day in and day out. The Cracker Barrel story, they rebranded. They did a $700 million rebrand, and it shocked the system, and they retreated. They had to appease the people, and they repealed their thing. Yeah. And they did it in a reactionary way, whereas people who are catalyzing change, now if they would have, been a little bit more pacing, they would have piloted some of their ideas in certain areas, then they would have given out a little bit. They would have tested some of these things, tested the logo, tested the removal of things from like the decor from the place. They would have tested, other things to see, is this integration worth our while, worth the $700 million that we're willing to spend on this change? And they would have given their employees detail advance, right? They would have let them know some of the details. Hey, Cracker Barrel is making a change. Here's some of the changes. If they were regulated and they were really connected with the organization, they would have checked in with them. Now, the CEO, I don't necessarily blame her for making the decisions that she did. She came from Starbucks that has a really limited menu. She came from Taco Bell that has a really limited menu, and they do rebrands and changes all the time. Like it's constant, constant, constant. But the Cracker Barrel core audience is not the same as the Taco Bell. It's not the same as the Starbucks. Like you're going there for maybe one or two things, maybe to go and it's not a huge thing. It's not like a whole long-term experience. Whereas Cracker Barrel is a little bit more of a long-term experience. You're going to sit down and have a meal and share it with friends or family, right? So there was a different identity with the core audience. And also the people that work there, they're in a different state. So you really have to know who your audience is, be able to connect with them, and then you start with the initiating of these changes that you're suggesting, then managing it, and then leading it in a way that it connects with the people. It's all in the rebrand, but the execution of the rebrand is key. Yeah. I mean, I even mentioned KFC. KFC, I don't even think they did a rebrand. They did a rebrand without doing a rebrand. It's the best way I could say it, but they made the Colonel Sanders seem cool. They made the Colonel like they gave him this youthful image that connected people to it, right? That was a very I mean, as I think about it, I'm just like that was a really cool rebrand. They didn't rechange anything about the look of the logo, right? But there was a rebrand where it made it a little bit more youthful. KFC. I always think of him in that, like the Colonel dancing to some rave music. So finally, people with this competency are going to demonstrate the mental agility to consider new approaches. Okay, so they're going to be open with their reasoning. You cannot be in a dysregulated state and reason and accept these, have the mental agility to bounce through the multitude of ideas from different people. Okay? You have to be in your prefrontal cortex. You have to have that critical thinking, that reasoning part of your executive function operating. Okay? Now, people lacking in this competency, it's a short list, but they're happy with the status quo. They don't recognize the need for change. They're just happy with the way things are. They're going to be a little resistant to it as well. The Colonel and the deep fried dubstep. Yeah. Uh, it's really funny. I I will, anytime that I come across that, I'm always watching. I just watch it like a few times. I don't know if you guys know what I'm talking about. The Crispy Skin remix. Crispy or bust? All right. People lacking with this competency of catalyzing change, they have a vocabulary that often includes the way we've always done things around here. It's the way we've always done things. And the other day I was talking about numbness as a strength, and part of that numbness is this resignation. It's like, whatever. I can't really do anything to change. You have this resignation, or you just kind of let things happen with this apathetic nature to like what's happening. You're not involved, and so you're just okay with this is the way we've always done things. People lacking this competency also are overtly and covertly resistant to change. Okay. They also fail to prepare for the future. Um, Preparing for the future is, there is this pacing with it. You can't just like come up with an idea and immediately implement it. It's very difficult on the team's nervous system. I worked in food and beverage, and it was like constant. rebrand, 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 change, change, change. There was no pacing. And in fact, I worked in procurement. It's my career. And so many times, people that were not skilled or experts in my field would say, just order the thing, just get the thing in immediately, whatever the first thing is. And many times I had to challenge that and say, I think it's best for us to wait. I saved a lot of money doing that. I think it's best for us to wait for other quotes to come in, give it another day. What's another day? If we act now, it might be, there might be a lot more work that goes into it. So when you're in this reactivity, you can't see the future. It's just now, now, now. Okay. The next one is they lack the ability to maintain an open mind about change and what it might bring. So if you lack the open mind, if you lack the ability to maintain an open mind, you're really missing out on a lot of stuff. Now, Google, they want that open mind. They want people to feel relaxed. They want to create a place of psychological safety because they truly, like, even when they were getting rid of managers, at the core of what they desired was the human creativity and innovation of how can we change things and make it better. Even in their navigation of how they handle management of their people, they see their labor as a valuable resource, and it is, and it always will be. Okay. Now, if they were reactive, maybe they have been, but if they were completely reactive, they wouldn't have an open mind. They would say, oh, nope, just do this. I mean, engineering is, and coding and programming and all that stuff is, I mean, I kind of see that as a pretty cut and dry, sterile environment. But if you can add a little bit of flavor with creativity and innovation, then you can create a dynamic product that changes the lives of, I mean, millions of people use Google every day. Millions of people have Google accounts, Gmails. A lot of people use Google Drive, right? It's something you put on your resume, and how to use Google Drive. So they've created this really dynamic product by appropriately harnessing and initiating the changes that needed to be made in certain areas of their business. Lackadaisical meandering and rootless motoring. That's funny. Okay, so how can we improve our position of catalyzing change? How can we, like, everything emotional and social intelligence is a frequency, and it always can be raised. You can raise your frequency in these. So if you're relating with, some of the area on this competency positively, and then maybe some of the lacking, and you're saying like, oh, it's kind of 50-50, just know that you can change that about yourself. That's the great thing. So some development tips are you can challenge the status quo and the way you have always done things. So, instead of saying this is the way we have always done things, if you ever think that you're in that position, challenge yourself to think outside of that. Why do I think that this can't change? Hi, Clara. Welcome. How can I change this into something that would make me happy? How can I introduce something that is innovative? Some other development tips are identify how and where things could be better. I know that when I start at a new company, I have a lot of new ideas that I bring into it. The problem is that when you get into this position and you notice that they're not open and receptive, maybe they have a lot of this, the company organization itself has a lot of resistance to change. Like they say they want it, but when it really comes down to it, you've introduced a few ideas and have been turned down negatively. Like it wasn't really receptive. just really identify how how you would make things better. Maybe it's not even at work. Maybe this could be in your personal life. How can you change how you operate and make things better? Okay? It doesn't have to be in the workplace. This could be in your friendships. The next one is communicate change initiatives and how things will be better. So, in the case of change, you cannot possibly over communicate. So, talk about the changes that you would like to see made. I'd really like things to be this way. How can we get there? What ideas do you think you can contribute to getting us to this certain goal? The next one is to be able to address how the change will impact people and be prepared to deliver the change message in a way that allows them to see how they will be better off with the change. Let's use my let's use my initiative of end toxic workplace culture, right? What does that look like on the other end? Okay? If I'm communicating it clearly, saying you're going to be a lot happier at work if you know that you're valued, if your manager is speaking and treating you in a way that makes you feel valued, that they're paying you according to your skill, that they value your relationships outside of work as well as inside of work. Meaning that if you need to go take care of your family, they will allow you to do that. I saw a post today on LinkedIn, and it's this lovely lady. She teaches leadership EQ. And she had a post and it said, my employee came to me and asked if they could work out of the country for 2 months. And her response was yes. Let me know what you need in order to be successful in wherever you're going. Right? Now, granted, you have to have a position that is available for remote work, not something that's like manufacturing inside of a building or anything like that. But like having that flexibility in an admin position and then having that trust of manager to employee saying, yeah, that I'm open to that. Do that. In fact, Pinterest does this. It's part of it's just a part, everybody has that ability. It's all remote work. And they allow you to be out of the country working for up to 3 months out of the year. Um, the other 9 months you have to be in the country, but you can be out of the country for up to 3 months. Frequency push the zeitgeist. Yes. Been reading Rudolf Steiner's Manifestations of Karma. Interesting and thought provoking. I'm gonna have to read that. A lot of people recommend Steiner, and I probably resonate with it. It's probably be activating for me. But you know, when that's a huge change in 5 years ago business. 5 years ago, you know, it wasn't that way. It took a pandemic in order to kind of push this remote hybrid workspace where it used to be on site. Now the employees are resistant to going back into the workplace on site when they've been working remotely for X amount of time. Okay? So there was a way we were kind of forced as a business culture, how we were forced outside of these on-site facilities. But then that change impacted people where they're like, well, I don't see why I need to commute to work when I can just do my job from this location. I've been doing it for the last 3 years, 2 years or whatever. So, you know, a regulated leader is going to be able to see that. And even though it may not be part of the norm, maybe they're like, well, you know what? I trust you to do your job. And yes, I sign off on that. have fun in Bali for 2 months, right? Or wherever they're going. uh, okay. So that change, by accepting that change, the employee initiated the change, the manager managed that change, and then they can both lead that change together. Maybe it becomes a new initiative, or a new bonus, or not bonus, I don't want to say that, but just a new benefit to the employees of that person's company. Of you get to work off site, you can work out of country for X number of months, totally fine. Just make sure that you notate it through with the people resources team. Okay, the final development tip is to develop a written plan for major change shifts. So create a sense of urgency, establish a guiding coalition, a team of people that are going to guide this along, develop and communicate a vision and strategy for the change, empower the action, and then generate and celebrate the short term wins. Generate more, keep on cycling through that, generate more, celebrate those wins, and anchor those new approaches to the culture of the organization. Now, this doesn't have to be a business organization. This could be a nonprofit. It could be, a community function or whatever it is. But if you're going to make major changes, over communicating what those changes are ahead of the change helps to brace it in the nervous system. The problem that happened with Cracker Barrel is like the initiation was a top down change. It happened overnight. It shocked the whole system. Everyone's like bouncing. What are we doing? What are we doing? Because the amygdala gets hijacked anytime there's change. Like if you go into work every day, right? And let's say you have a toolbox and you open your tool drawer and you're like, oh my gosh, this thing is missing. You immediately go into fight, flight, freeze mode. Like, what the heck is going on? Where's my wrench? That is my wrench. I expect it to be here all the time. Like, you notice changes, especially if you're a hypervigilant person. You'll notice that, if somebody messed with your pens or pencils, or if there's a new item on your desk, or I kind of did a crazy thing where, like, if you go into work and somebody removed everything off of your desk, no computer, all your personal stuff is boxed up, and you're just like, what the heck is going on? You know, here I am getting ready for my morning ritual of getting ready for work, getting ready to sit down, and now my whole, like, who moved my cheese thing is going on. You want to make sure that you announce these changes ahead of time, not just authoritarian style, this is happening. And if you don't do this, then you're out, buddy. All right. So, those are the developments. Hopefully, that was informative and good for you guys. I have the change process. I'll just kind of go over it really quick, and then I am going to call it an evening. Always spray paint or engrave tools because they tend to develop legs. Yeah. Damn sticky fingers. I can't tell you how many tape measures I have, or even paintbrushes. Something was always happening to them. But yeah, scissors. I would mark my scissors because for some reason they just like disappear. So when you're looking at the change process as a whole, there's 8 steps for leading a successful change. All right. So if you're rebranding or you're doing whatever, the first thing is you're going to create a sense of urgency with the proposed change. For Cracker Barrel, it was really our core audience is aging, and we want to introduce a younger audience into this brand. So the first thing you do is you create a sense of urgency. We need to get younger people in. And then build guiding teams and coalitions. So, certain teams are going to be responsible for certain parts of the change. So you're ultimately creating this climate for change by creating that sense of urgency. And then by building teams, you're enlisting people to help out with leading that change. And then to establish a vision. We want to have a Cracker Barrel that, young people can feel at home at, as well as they can develop some of the same nostalgia that our core customer base has. So you want to establish a vision and then put that out first. It's not a surprise. We're working on this. Maybe there's a memo that goes out. Maybe it's on social media. You know, that creating that climate is going to be the first thing in getting the change process set up. Now, moving on to part 4 is you're going to communicate the buy-in. Got a new drafting table for drawing, has been really nice since dedicated area for doodles. Yeah. Is that at work? That's cool. So the next part of this, we're going to be engaging and empowering the organization. So you're going to communicate the changes for buy-in. You're going to want to communicate. Now you have your vision. Now this is how we want to get started. This is how we're going to start engaging. What do you guys think of this vision? Then step 5 is enable and empower for action. Maybe you have a suggestion. Maybe somebody's created a website area where they can just scan a QR code and go in and give their suggestions. And then they send that out to all the franchises. And then create a short-term win list. Now, when things are done, let's say they had some pilots, and some of the wins were awesome. They are ready to integrate. They would communicate that. So we're continuing to communicate, empower action, and enable action, and then share the wins that are happening there. I have it for home, trying to get my art wave rolling aside from physical labor. Love that. Diversify skills. That is so important. I can't tell you how important it is. Like, if you are in a mundane job where everything is the same and you're a little bit more creative and active minded, of going and doing something creative that you can express yourself. It doesn't matter what it is, drawing or painting or whatever. It actually helps to regulate your nervous system. It helped me a lot when I did it. And then the final process, even though we're on step 7, this is 7A, is to consolidate gains. So don't let up on the wins that are happening. Consolidate them into this bigger change of, we're implementing this vision, and here is the ongoing action of that vision, and then anchor the change and make it stick. Okay. So once you collect all these short-term wins, build it into a bigger win and show everyone that, by all of us operating and changing the the brand of Cracker Barrel, we have now not only maintained our brand image, but we've also been able to get the youth to come in a lot more. The youth are, that younger generation, the younger clientele are now coming into Cracker Barrel, and now we've increased our consumer base, our customer base. This isn't an overnight process. It takes time. Imagine going up to somebody and yelling at them to do something versus saying, hey, we're doing this, prepare yourself for it. How many people like doing something the same day versus knowing a week in advance that you're going to go do something? I mean, it's a huge, well, it used to be a huge trend. There'd be like Millennials like to stay at home and they don't go out anymore or whatever. Or introverts, when they get invited to a party and then the day of the party, it's like they get reminded that they agreed to go to this party and they're like, "Oh my gosh, I forgot." And then their nervous system, because they're introverted, they're like, "I don't really want to leave. I just want to stay home." Like their nervous system just kind of acts up of like, "Don't go to the party." This happens to my son all the time. I'll be like, "Let's go to the lake." "I don't want to go. I don't want to go." We get there and it's like a fun time. But like up until that point, it's it's kind of a fight of getting him out of the house. So that is the change process, and this ability to catalyze change is important. It's one of the 26 competencies of emotional and social intelligence, which are both pretty closely related. The emotional intelligence is really, how do I relate with myself and others? And the social is, how do I interact with myself and others? And these are important pieces into building some emotional resilience and regulation as a leader, as a human, even more so. And it's pretty interesting because once you start to gain skills, gain these soft skills, then you become, life just becomes a little bit easier because you're not so rushed. You're not so terrified of like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? Now you're a little bit more prepared for it. So I hope that was good for you. That was all that I had today for our teaching, our lesson. I think this is 3 of 26, so that's pretty good. I'm really enjoying that. I love being outside. I reject the millennial moniker. Me too. Well, I think the thing is like they don't want to leave their house to go to a social event. I don't know. They're very strange. They're very weird. Anyways, well, Ryan Bradley, it's good to see you. See you in a little bit. Everyone else, thank you guys so much for watching, for joining. Thanks for all the subs. I'm up to 222. It was cool. And yeah, it's been really wonderful. Probably be on tomorrow. So please make sure that you subscribe and hit the notification bell, I guess. I think you might have to do that to know when I go live. But I will be on tomorrow. We'll have another chit chat. And no hoods till Friday. That guy. How am I supposed to keep up with the times? Well, you're going to have to remind me then. All right. Anyways, you guys are here. Make sure you guys buy a copy of my book. There's pre-orders going on right now. It's only $5. I think the link is in my description. I'm going to get that updated, but it is called The $8 Truth Exposing a $380 billion Lie. And it is casting a light on the leadership and development and the DEI cultural initiative fails and what we can do to resolve it. So this gives a solution, a workable solution, something that's not crazy, like making you learn every single thing about every single thing. This is just from a basic creating an authentic and genuinely curious leader of yourself. So I encourage you guys to get this, share it with your managers, share it with your leaders, share it with your friends. This is a playbook on the future of well-being workplaces. And my whole entire goal here is to end toxic workplace culture. I don't like it, and I'm sure you guys don't like it either. And this is one of the ways that I found would be the best solution to bringing in a better work environment. So, oh, thank you. Yep, it's just pre-orders right now. It's launching October 8th, and I hope that you guys get a copy. All right, well, I love you guys. I'm going to go hang out with my son, and I will talk to you guys tomorrow. All right, have a good one.